In this video, we will be creating a progressive strip assembly for a complex form part using LogoPress 3 and its Progressive Blank Companion add-on. First, I'll open up a file. I will be opening up a Parasolid file, but it can be any file that can be opened in SolidWorks and saved as a SolidWorks part file. Any dump solid. I'll just save it. So here we have a part that has multiple shapes on it, and we need to form it in multiple stations. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the stations of the strip, and we're always working from the finished part and working our way backwards to a flat blank. The last station of the strip is where we're going to blank the part through, and the part needs to be positioned below the stock strip. So I'm going to use a SolidWorks Move Copy Body feature to move the part down, representing it being blanked through. And then insert a LogoPress feature called a station mark. This writes out a body file which will be used later on in the creation of the strip. The next station, or the station closer to the beginning, this part is at die level. So I will now move it back into place using Move Copy Body and insert another station mark. The station before, this is the station where we are piercing this hole. So the station for that, this is filled in. So I'm going to use a SolidWorks feature called Delete Face to delete and patch that hole. And before we create, this will be the station where we are forming the flanges. Before we start up Progressive Blank Companion, I'm going to create some geometry on the part that we're going to use to unform the part. So first I'm going to create a plane that is in this area right here. So I select the right plane and use the SolidWorks reference geometry. And I'm just going to offset the plane 5/8 of an inch to the right. And you can see that is running right in that area that I was pointing to. And on this plane, I'm going to start a sketch. I'm going to use a SolidWorks sketch feature called Intersection Curve. And I will select the faces of the part like this. And wherever that sketch plane is, it creates sketch entities on those selected faces. I am just going to drag the ends of the sketch geometry out. And I'm going to use this sketch to create an extruded surface, and that's what we're going to use to unform the part. I just have to make sure this is extended out past where I believe the flattened part would be. I go to Surfaces, Extruded Surface, and I'll extrude it 3 inches in one direction, and in the second direction, 4 inches. And there we have our extruded surface. I'm going to rename this surface feature on surface, because that is the option that we will use in Progressive Blank Companion to flatten out the part. I am just going to come up here and hide that surface just so it's out of the way, and also hide this plane that we just created. Next, I am going to split the faces of the part down the middle right here. Again, I'll use the right plane and a SolidWorks mold tool called Split Line. I'll select this face, this face, this face. So those faces. And I want to put focus here because I'm going to actually use another plane, the top plane, because I want to split it also crossways on this top face right here. And select OK. At this point, I go to LogoPress 3 and start up blank for foreign part. And Progressive Blank Companion, the function, is in the 3D stage tab of this blank for foreign part function. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my pinching entity. Where on this part are we going to hold it and it's not going to move? Well, the part is being held right here by the carrier on the strip. So I'll select this vertex as my main pinching point. I will also select that edge and that edge. So that entire edge right there is going to remain stationary. I'm also going to select some additional edges. I'll just right click on this edge, select tangency. And you can see it selected all these edges going down the middle of the part. But these edges I want to unlock along the length of them. Right now you can see by these symbols that these edges are locked in both of these directions, both the X and the Y direction. I can tell that's X and Y by this triad right here. Here's the X direction, here's the Y direction. So I have the last edge selected, and then holding my shift key down, I will select up to edge 3 and scroll down, and I will unlock all of these in the Y direction. You can now see that we have arrow shapes for these. Over here, these are still locked in both directions, and we want that to be like that. Over here, it's giving me a warning that this triad may not be necessarily aligned to these edges. So I'm just going to put focus in the X direction box and select this edge, or one of these edges. And now we know that this triad is aligned to that. I'll select my material type from the LogoPress 3 material database. My mesh parameters, I'll leave it express. And what we want to do is we want to create a station where the flanges are flattened out, but still has this offset and the rib running through it. So I'm going to go to 3D stage because I want to create a 3D stage. And what I have to do is select a boundary as to what do I want to flatten or unform. I'll select these faces of the radius of the flange on this side. So it's going to unform this radius and everything beyond that point out this way. And I have different options here, tangent to the boundary edge and deviation on boundary edge, but I'm going to use on surface. I check that option and I'll come over here and select the surface that we had created previously, the one that's called on surface. Then I'll scroll down and hit compute. It places a mesh on the part and then uses that to flatten up to the surface that we had selected. And here we can see the preview of that unforming. If that is to our liking, we don't want to change any parameters, we just select OK. And that flange is unformed. We can only unform one flange at a time. So now I will unform the other side of the part. Not only can we select the faces of these radiuses, but we could also select this edge instead. I'll just right click on one of them and select tangency. You can see I got that boundary edge. I will do the same thing here. And it selects the remaining edges. So I got my boundary. I will select on surface again. Select my predefined surface. Scroll down and select compute. Again, we get a preview of that unformed state. And I'll select OK. You can see in the feature manager tree that it is also inserting station marks automatically for each one of those stages. At this point, this is what the part's going to look like in the station where the rib is being formed. Well, now we want to create the stage where the rib is not formed, but it still has the offset. So again, I'm going to select my boundary edges. I will just select these 4 edges, because remember our main pinching entity is right here. So this means that everything beyond this boundary outside here is going to get flattened or unformed. Again, I'll use the on surface option. Select that predefined surface. And select compute. We get a preview of that state. You can see that the edge of the material is out further because of the flattening of the rib, but it still has that offset in it. I'll select OK, and that stage is formed. We now get a warning though saying that the pinched entities, it can't find the original pinched entities because, well, that those edges running down the middle of the part are no longer there. So I'm going to go back to parameters, and I'm going to clear out our pinching entities and reselect them. So I'll select the center vertex again, these 2 edges, and this edge running down this way. I'm just going to leave all of them locked in both directions because they don't need to move. I will then go to, well, the station before this is flat. So I want to compute a 2D blank. So I'll come over here to the 2D blank tab and select compute. And here's the flattened state of the part. I'll select OK. There's our flat blank for the part. All I need to do is insert that last station mark for the flat blank. I will now go through and rename each of these station marks. It is not necessary to rename these station marks, but I like to rename them according to what the stations appear to be. I always leave the numbered portion of the station mark remaining as it is and just rename the second half of that. So this one will be 070 flat blank, because that's what we have here. I then will roll up underneath the 060 station mark, and this is where the offset is being formed. So I'll rename this station mark 060 form offset. I'll roll up underneath the 050 station mark, and this is where the rib is being formed. So I'll rename this 050, leave that remaining, and I'll just add form rib. You can see though that this station right here is just a surface. There's no thickness to it. It's not a solid body. We will come back later to thicken this. Roll up to the 040 station mark. This is where only half of the flange is, one side of the flange is being formed down. So I'll rename this one as being 040 unused, because we will not use this particular station mark. Roll up to the 030, and this is where both sides of the flanges are being formed down, so I will rename this 030 form flanges. Go up to the 020 station mark. That's where we pierce this hole. So this will be 020 pierce hole. And up to the 010 station mark, and you can see the part just moved down because this is this station where it's being blanked through. So I'll call this 010 blank part through. Roll down back down to the end. Now I'll go back and correct or thicken those surfaces. So if I go up to form flanges, we do have a solid body. But if I go down to unused, well, yes, it is a surface, but since this is going to be an unused station mark, I can just leave that. I'll go down to just above the form rib station mark. And we do need to thicken this. So I'll go to surfaces, select the thicken feature, select the body I want to thicken, enter in the thickness, 0.100. Make sure that the preview is thickening in the correct direction, which it is. Otherwise, we could change the direction here. Select OK, and now we have a solid body. I'm going to roll down just above the form offset station mark. You can see that we do have a feature that errored out, a body delete feature. That is because when I edit it, the body it was referencing before was a surface. We just thickened it. Now it's a solid body. So I just have to reselect that solid body and click OK. Now you can see it is not errored out. I need to now thicken this body. So I select surface thicken, select the body I want to thicken. We can see it is going in the correct direction. So I'll select OK. I have a solid body for that station. I'll roll down to the end of the tree, and I'd have another error on a body delete feature because we just thickened that surface. Edit that feature, select the body we need to delete, hit OK. And now we have no error. And our flat blank was automatically extruded when it was created. We have one last thing that we should do. Is this flat blank is a sketch that's been extruded. I'm going to edit the sketch for that extrusion. normal to. And you can see that the flat blank is not symmetrical from side to side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut half of or delete half of this part away and mirror it so that we do have a symmetrical blank. The reason it is not symmetrical is because of the nature of the meshing. The mesh is not placed symmetrically on the part, and so the blank cannot be symmetrical. It's very close. It just isn't exactly symmetrical. I'll place the center line on here so we can mirror it. And I'll make it coincident with the origin. I'll trim this half away. Select the sketches and mirror them about that center line. Now we have a symmetrical blank and exit the sketch. And I'll save the part. The next step is to use a LogoPress function called part preparation. It'll ask me to rebuild the reference part. That's the part with the station marks. Now it's asking me to select what face on the part is die level. I'm going to change the configuration of the part temporarily so that I can rotate it. So I'm looking at the die face, change it back to the flat blank configuration, select the die plane face. Then I'll select the origin. I'll just select the origin of the part and click OK. Save the part. At this point, there is another function that is very interesting, and that is I'll just hide the sketches and the solid body. And the tool, LogoPress tool, is hide show the imported bodies. This is where you can overlay different stages on top of each other. So you can see the different stages on top of each other. And when you're done, you just select hide all imported bodies. At this point, we can create our strip assembly. I'll select create edit strip layout. I will give the strip assembly a file name. And then I will come down here and give it a project name. I can add it as a prefix or suffix. I added mine as a prefix, and you can see it automatically got added to the front of the file name. This project name will get added to every file in the assembly automatically. I will be feeding right to left. I'll select configuration as station, and I can rough out the stations of the strip here. I'll add some idles in the beginning of the die so we can do some trimming and piercing. And the station called unused, I'm just going to change that to form rib. We can always add and remove stations later on once the strip is created. And select save. And our strip is created. At this point, this is going to be a 2-out strip, so I'm going to add another of these parts to the strip assembly. I'm going to select add a part in the strip assembly, and I'll just select that part again. Go into configuration as station. Everything is laid out the same as the other parts, so I'll just select OK and hit open. That part will then be automatically added to the strip assembly. We can see the second part down here. Well, I'm just going to select it and say I want to rotate that 180 degrees. I can see the preview of that over here. I'm going to select apply to apply that change in the strip assembly. I now need to arrange or position these parts so that one part is a certain distance above the center of the stock width, and the other part is that same distance but below the center of stock width. To see where the center of stock is, I like to show the origin points. I'll select the first part, and I can move that part in the X and Y directions. I'll make it the X 2.5 inches. So that's from the origin, which is always running down the middle of stock width, to what we had selected for the origin when we did our part preparation. Then for the Y position, I'm going to move that up a little bit further so we have room for a carrier in the middle. I'll make that 2.625. I'll then select the other part. Again, the X I'll make 2.5. The Y I'll make a negative 2.625. And here in the first two stations, we can see the preview. I will now hit apply to apply those changes. You can see everything updated throughout the strip. I will now adjust my step or my progression. I'll hit this icon to toggle up between either adjusting the space between the parts or the step or the pitch. I'll just round the progression to 5 inches and even 5 inches. Now you can see the space between the parts updated to 2.36. Also, I can adjust the fixed value from the top and bottom of the strip, how much scrap we have here and here. I'll make that 0.2. You can see then our strip width just updated. I'm going to round that to even 18 inches. And now you can see the distance to the edge of the strip has just updated. And then I'll select apply. I no longer need to see the origins of the strip or the part, so I'll just hide those now. And at this point, I'm going to start creating some of the cutting punches. To do that, I'll go to the Punch tab and select Add a Cutting Punch. When I do this, it does multiple things. It creates and inserts a part file for the punch, and then it creates a sketch inside of it and makes me normal to that sketch. I will now create and close shape in the general area where that punch will be, and then select Search the Punch Outline. It automatically converts entities off of the blank sketch and then trims to them. I can now add a punch mismatch. We have 3 different types. Select the 2 lines, hit OK. Here you can see the mismatch. I'll now adjust it, the size. You can set the default size in the LogoPress options. I'll add some fillets. At this time, I'm going to convert some geometry from the strip from the skeleton part to use for dimensioning. I'm going to use a LogoPress function called convert for construction. These vertical lines are at the beginning of each stage, and then you have a horizontal line running down the middle of the strip. I will use these lines here to place some dimensions. You can see our sketch is fully defined, so I'll just exit out of the sketch. And there's our cutting punch. I'll add another punch over on this side. So I'll go add a cutting punch. Sketch in a shape, search the punch outline, add a punch mismatch. Convert the vertical and horizontal construction line. Fully defined now. Exit out of the sketch, and there's my second punch. Now I need instances of these punches over on the front side of the strip. I'll use a LogoPress function called copy and 16 punch. I have this punch selected still, so I'll select copy and 16 punch. I'll select a reference entity on the punch. I'll select the destination over here. You can see I have a preview of the copied punch. I'll select OK. I'll do the same for this punch. I'll now create a notching punch over here. So I'll go add a cutting punch. Have some extra lines here I don't need, so I'll trim those away. Extend and trim there. Convert some construction geometry. Make this symmetrical. Fully defined, I'll exit out of the sketch. And I need a mirrored version of this punch over on the front. So I'll select create the mirrored punch. There's my mirrored version of that punch over here. I'll create a punch, a notching punch over here. Add a cutting punch. Convert some additional construction geometry. Create a punch mismatch. This time I'll use punch mismatch number 3, which is for like a French notch. I'll adjust the size of it. I'll add some fillets. And exit sketch. I can now mirror this punch over to the front using the create the mirror punch option. And create the punch for the pilot hole. So I'll go add a cutting punch. Notice I'm putting all my punches in on top of each other because I can move them down or to any station that I want later on. So I'm going to convert some construction geometry. And the only punches left would be the blank through punches. So we'll add a cutting punch. Convert some construction geometry. Make it symmetrical. Place some dimensions on here. And add some fillets. I can double check that I'm going into the mismatch properly. That looks good. Looks fine on this side also. And exit the sketch. I'll then copy this punch over to the front. Select my reference sketch entity and my destination. I can now move the punches where I want them to be. If I want to move this pilot hole punch over, I just select it. I can move it using these arrows. If I want to move this punch over, again, select it. I can move it with an arrow. Same thing with this one. Or I can hold down the Alt key and drag and drop it. Once I have everything in place, I hit apply. It'll apply the moves and the cuts into the strip. You can see all the cuts have been applied. Let's say I don't want these two punches directly across from each other. I want this one moved over. Well, I can add a station to the strip by selecting the station and select insert a station before the selected step. I only want one station, so I'll just hit apply. We have our extra station. Now I can select this punch and move it down one station and select apply for that. It'll fill in the scrap in this station and move the punch over to this one. And you can see this red arrow is our center of cutting force. You will see it move because the punch has now moved over. You see it moved from here to here. The last thing that we need to do is you see the blank through punches are a little bit short. They need to be entered in a little bit further. So I am going to expand or click on this option right here, switch between selecting only one punch or several punches. So now I can select this punch, and I can say I want them to be independent. And I want to enter in or make them longer by 90 thousandths. So put plus 0.90 on the entry and plus 0.90 longer on the overall length. Otherwise, if I did not select independent punch, then all of the punches would have changed to that value. I want these to be independent of these other ones. I can now click OK. And at this point, I'll get LogoPress will ask me, do I want it to update strip information, calculate all this information, and place it into a note for me. I can also click on the option to create a joined part for the strip. This will make the part of the strip look more realistic for our drawings. I'll select yes. It's calculating all the cutting and forming forces and places it into a note. You can also see that it joined the strip into one part. You can see here we have all this information, and all this information has also been put into a spreadsheet that you can open up in Excel. It also gives you forces for individual punches, individual stations, and right here is our center of cutting force. And we have our completed strip.